Okay, so here we have the ulna. I always know it's the ulna because it has a U right here telling me that it starts with U and U for ulna. And the first thing we want to do is figure out left or right. A couple features that I like to use. Right here is kind of the business end of the ulna. This is the part that makes up your elbow, and so it has to be proximal. And we'll talk about what specifically those structures are in a second, but we know the U here also means up, so that's going to be proximal. Okay, the styloid process of the radius, right? So the styloid process, if you remember, is a little projection that sticks off. Right? So this one is going to stick off distal, and it's also going to be medial. Right? So if you feel, you can actually feel the styloid process going on right in there. Those two little bumps on either side of your wrist are actually parts of your forearm. Right? So the styloid process is going to be medial. This part's going to face up, and this is a right ulna. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the specific structures here. So if you look at it, there's four at the proximal end of the ulna that you need to be aware of. This one at the top is called the olecranon process. Again, a process is a projection. Olecranon, that word is the root is both head and elbow, so it's the head of the elbow, right? So it's the uppermost portion. Like ola, that root means elbow, and cranon, like cranium, means head, right? So this is the top of the elbow, right here. Right here, this little notch, it's called the trochlear notch. With the structure on the humerus called the trochlea, right? That medial condyle. It forms really the pulley system. And that's what trochlea means. It means pulley, and that's what your elbow basically is a pulley for pulling things. And this last little one is called the coronoid process, right? So it's actually the coronoid process of the ulna because you also have one on your mandible, and so it's a little crow's beak that sticks out. So coronoid process, trochlear notch, olecranon process. All right, right here, that's called the radial notch. You can kind of see that indentation right there. All right, so that radial notch, what do you think is going to articulate with it? And if you guessed radius, then you're right. The head of the radius sits in there, and that T, that golf tee looking thing, really sits in there and rotates nicely, and so you have a good point of articulation. All right, so those are the four structures on the proximal end: the olecranon process, trochlear notch, coronoid process, radial notch. On the distal end, you only have two. You have the styloid process, which we've already talked about, and then this whole thing altogether is actually the head of the ulna. All right, so the way to remember it is distal ulnar head, or D-U-H, distal ulnar head. Right, so you don't call it that actually, it's just called the ulnar head or the head of the ulna. But it's right there, styloid process, right there. Coronoid process, trochlear notch, olecranon process, radial notch.